Midway through the year 2017, a friend and I decided to pack up a couple things and head out to the nearby abandoned hospital that sat in the middle of town. The children's ward was definitely weird, but most of the hospital was gutted. I grabbed my camera, my laptop, and anything else I would need to capture any of the evidence that might happen that night. I grabbed everything and headed out to my friend's house to pick him up. Once we were both ready, we headed out to the park to keep an eye out on the hospital, for any police presence or anybody who might be watching. After a couple of hours, we noticed a couple of people walking toward the hospital. We decided to lay low, but noticed it was a couple of kids from the town who were also into the hospital. We met up with them and decided to set up a 3-man insertion team and a 2-man team to keep an eye out for anyone who might go around the area. We opened the window inside the horseshoe of a hospital, having only darkness as our protection. I stepped in with 2 of the people who showed up, while Cody and the other of the 3 stayed outside. Once inside, I locked the window to make sure no one from the outside would be able to come in and fuck with us. We turned on our flashlights and I hit record on my camera. Walking out of the room the window was in, we traveled through the maze of construction equipment and doorways leading to the other rooms. Finally, finding the staircase, we walked up to the 2nd floor and set all my shit on the stretcher that sat in the middle of the reception area. Taking a look around, I remember the darkness, the silence that then slowly fell over the room. I've had this feeling before and I don't really know how to explain it. I guess it could be described as my instincts, but I knew something was about to happen. Whether it was due to the darkness engulfing the entire hospital or the numbing silence. Possibly both, honestly. When my phone began to ring, I knew something was wrong. Picking up the phone, I saw that it was my friend outside calling, so I answered and set the call to speaker. "Yeah, man, what's up?" I spoke, taking a good look around me. With lights on now, I could see the window leading to the roof. I could see the open doorway with a tiny window on the right, and the hallway that led to the area of the child's doll I left for the little girl's spirit. That was then followed by the chapel area. "Dude, you guys have to get out of there right now. It isn't safe." I heard my friend almost scream. I sighed, knowing that when he was scared, all he wanted to do was run, no matter if we had just gotten there. Taking another look around, I didn't really take him seriously. I figured he just wanted to leave, like normal. "Bro, we just set up. Why do we need to leave?" "We just saw 3 giant shadow people, about 8 feet each. One ran straight into the window you guys went in through, another jumped straight onto the roof, and the third jumped onto the 2nd floor window, sat there for a bit, and then just phased into the window." Now, of course, I didn't believe him. Why would I? I mean, 8-foot shadow people jumping into the hospital? How would anyone believe that shit? I went to tell him how I thought he was bullshitting, but before I could get anything else out, I heard the biggest bang I had ever heard come from right behind me. I turned around to see if the other 2 were fucking with me, but they were on either side of me as I turned. Looking at both of them, we nodded in agreement. "Yeah, fuck that, we're on our way." I instantly hung up and started to pack up everything I had just unpacked. I threw my bag on my shoulder and we began to run down the hallway back to the staircase. While descending the stairs, I felt a dark presence crawl on top of me, and I soon began to fall, deeper and deeper. I could feel myself start to be swallowed by the darkness of my own mind. I saw my childhood first, the cries of a baby, the sounds of flesh on wood, then against the wall, and soon the crushing of bones, being shattered into pieces. The pain was immense. First my skull, a migraine that felt as if an ice pick were working its way out of my head, my skin splitting, revealing the fresh, dark red blood. Next, 3 of my ribs, the sharp edge of the coffee table being slammed into my gut until 3 ribs on the right side of my body were completely destroyed, pieces in my lungs and in my stomach. After that came another rib, then another and another. Breathing was difficult at this time. No matter how hard I tried, it felt as if each breath, my lungs were punctured by another piece of my ribs. Then came my collarbone, ripped apart from the inside. I could hardly move. The pain was so intense, I thought I would die right then and there. Finally, I could stand. I could see myself as an infant in the hospital, recovering, bandages and casts covering my body. I can't believe someone would do this to a 4-month-old child. I heard the voice come from behind me. Turning around, I saw 2 people who picked up the broken remains of the infant and put him back together. Now reaching inside of their own chests, they both pulled out half of their own hearts, put them together, now its own full heart, slipping it inside that chest of the baby. I knew this child was me. and the two people soon became clear. I knew they were the two who adopted me, my new parents, the ones who saved me. I felt happy now. I wanted to hug them more than anything, to thank them for taking my pain away. Before I could move, though, I felt an overwhelming pain in my new heart. I looked over to see my sister Stephanie, beautiful as a teenager, very little cares in the world. I saw her slowly slipping away as the brain tumor grew in size, almost the shape of a baseball now. Finally, the image of my sister faded and the darkness crept over me once more. I tried to look back over at my parents, but could see there was my mother, broken down on the ground, frustrated and overwhelmed. I saw my father laying in bed, his memory fading and his body deteriorating. My father, who once saved me, now a frail, fragile shell of who he once was. I tried to scream. I tried with everything I had to tell him I loved him, but my words were drowned out by 2 gunshots. I looked to my right, to find my younger brother laying on the ground in a pool of his own blood. The gun he had stolen from our mom, and had used to end it all, still in his left hand. I saw my father, now nothing more than skin and bones, be put into the casket. It was so hard to say goodbye. So as he was put down into the ground, I felt my body jump down with him. The feeling of falling once again came over me. This time, a light came from in front of me. As I fell closer and closer to the light, I felt the urge to puke, now being consumed by the light. I woke up on the ground, covered in sweat. I looked around and saw that I was outside, with everyone looking down at me. I looked back at the hospital, the window wide open. Just the memory of what happened was too much, so I got up and shut the window, locking it from the outside. I wiped off my forehead, my arm now covered in sweat. I turned back to them and nodded. We all started to head home, with the images of what had happened in the hospital still in my mind. I knew that I would never go back to the hospital in Halstead, Kansas.
My parents are acting stranger than usual since the pandemic. By MTP6921. Ever since COVID started, my parents have been taking the precautions way too seriously. I get it at first, when nobody knew how deadly the virus could be, but it's been months now and they haven't taken their masks off in the house. They won't even talk to me for fear they'll spread the virus to me, so they just send me text messages. They didn't think it was safe for my 19-year-old brother to live in the same house, so they texted me that they paid for him to go to Florida. The odd part is that he hasn't returned any of my texts that I have sent him. My school is still virtual, and my parents prefer I don't leave the house. Every morning when I wake up, I feel like I have a hangover, but I haven't drank alcohol in months. I just feel so alone, and my parents have been acting extremely weird lately since COVID. None of my extended family or friends are allowed over to the house. Both of my parents said that they have developed light sensitivity from probably contracting COVID months ago, so I never see them with their sunglasses off. In the past, I could always gauge who was walking up the stairs by the difference in the gaits that both of my parents had. However, both of their footsteps sound completely different now. My dad, who was a Gulf War veteran, was a starch Republican, but I'll go downstairs now and he'll be watching some left-leaning news broadcast. My mom's hair is still blonde, but the shade of blonde she wears now kind of looks more trashy. Almost like she took a bottle of bleach and just doused her hair in it. I'm starting to get really weirded out by them, that I started to lock my bedroom door at night, but I think one or both of them have a key, or are getting into my room by some other means. I purposely place stuff on the floor in a certain direction, and when I wake up, some of the things on the floor have moved. I really want to run from the house, but my parents have made me terrified of contracting this disease. They told me I have a heart condition, which I wasn't aware of that I had until a few months from now. I tried jokingly removing the mask from my mother's face, but she wears an N95, which is difficult to get off, and she didn't find it the least bit amusing, where she made a motion that she was going to hit me. I'm constantly freezing the house as they either don't turn on the heat high enough during the winter time, and they crank up the air conditioner now during the summer. They text me that I should wear hooded sweatshirts like they do in the house. Last week, I noticed traces of blood on my pillow, and when I went to look in my makeup mirror, I noticed that I had 2 circular round marks on my neck, about 3 inches apart, where it looks like something bit me.
As a personal interest, I always loved horror. I loved the movies, I loved the games, I loved the stories, I loved anything horror. Oftentimes, I would read people's scary stories and even post some of my own. One night, I was scrolling through different scary stories to read when one specific one caught my eye. It was named, "Have You Seen This Man?" When I clicked on the story, it had an image right below the title. It was an image of a man. It was what looked like a drawing, one you would see on the news of an unknown killer. For some reason, this image creeped me out. I wasn't the type to get scared very easily, so this was rare for me, but something about the image didn't feel right. I proceeded to read the story, which I found very interesting and also creepy. When looking at the comments of the post to this story, I saw a lot of other stories with people who had also encountered this man. It was unbelievable how many people had seen him. After reading a few of these encounters, I went to bed. I couldn't get the face of that man out of my head. It was almost as if maybe I had seen him somewhere. After a while of thinking about it, I finally fell asleep, only to have an unsettling dream. I was in a dark room, almost like a hallway. Behind me was a wall, as well as on both sides of me. When I looked ahead, I noticed something in the dark. It was the man. He was staring at me. He didn't move for a while. We just sat there for what felt like hours, and for some reason I couldn't take my eyes off of him. I couldn't look away. He never blinked, he never moved his eyes, and his body didn't move a muscle. He never took his eyes off of mine. After sitting there for a long time, he began to smile. His smile slowly grew bigger and bigger, and then it stopped. His arm slowly moved up, and I noticed that he had something in his grasp. He kept moving his arm up until I finally caught a glimpse of what it was, a knife. He just sat there holding the knife up with the unsettling smile on his face for a few seconds, and then he began moving forward. He kept coming closer and closer. His smile began to grow even more with each step he took. His smile finally stopped. I had no idea a human being was capable of smiling that wide. Or was he even human? He kept walking towards me until he was only a few inches away from my face. He just stood there for a few seconds. I could hear his breathing. It was almost as if he had trouble breathing. He seemed to be breathing very heavily. He raised his arm some, holding the knife in the air. I wanted to move. I wanted to get away from him, but I couldn't. I was paralyzed. I couldn't even blink at this moment. Couldn't take my eyes off of him. He suddenly began stabbing me, over and over again. He wouldn't stop. It was as if I was actually there. I could feel it. He just kept going, and eventually his smile grew wider. He finally stopped, dropping the knife below him. He mumbled something under his breath. Then he said it again, but this time louder. "I see you," he said, still staring into my eyes. "I'm coming for you. I'm by your doorway." I freaked out. Was he referring to me outside of the dream? "I'm opening the door. I'm peeking through the door. I see you." He got quiet for a moment, then began laughing as he spoke again. "I'm in the corner of your room now. I can smell you. I see you." I felt as if I couldn't breathe. "I see you. I see you. I see you," he began saying, getting louder each time. "I see you. I see you. I see you." He was yelling now. Even then, he still kept getting louder. "I see you!" Then, silence. He just stood there. This whole time, he had never taken his eyes off of mine. He never blinked. He only stared into my eyes. "I see you. he whispered one last time. I woke up, gasping for air. I quickly turned my lamp on, staring at the corner of the room. There was something unusual. My door was open, but I swear I shut it. There were large boot prints on the carpet, leading to the corner of the room, where there was a foul odor and a note on the ground. I ran and picked it up, then quickly ran back into my bed. The note read, I see you.